So this is the second time in a row, second year in a row that we've hosted this event. We have two amazing guests here with us today. JP, we're lucky enough to have living nearby. He is truly an icon in the VR industry. So we're lucky that he lives like 30 minutes away.
It's a little generous, but okay.
I mean, everybody knows you. And Albert flew in for this event as well, so thank you so much. Well, for this and a DJ event, but you know.
Yeah.
So to give a little background, this event is hosted by GTXR, the portal to extended reality at Georgia Tech. All things XR development and all that. We have weekly meetings discussing recent XR news. We have beginner-friendly student-led VR development projects, workshops, speaker events with people in the industry like this. We do XR research, and we have connections with researchers at Georgia Tech. And yeah, we believe in the future of personal computing. This is our Discord. Please join. That is where all of the event notifications are. And most of you probably are already here, given that you're here. So I think this is a fun opportunity to review where Vail was at last year. Because I was editing this presentation and I was like, man, it's really cool how much we've grown. So just a quick journey into the past. So last year we were arguably the best VR shooter on the market. We had 70,000 monthly active players, about over 50,000 people in our Discord server. Pretty good rating, 4.9 stars. And our main focus last year was going free to play, which was a drastic change in financials and everything. And we had launched a free to play social hub called the Citadel with mining and all that, and we were building that out. And
you should also clarify, Jack works at Vail, right? So you're not just a
GT. I'll get to that.
You got all the insider knowledge.
Yeah. So 1 year ago, going free to play was very new, and we were just starting to ideate and like prototype and think about a new big game mode, which was our extraction shooter mode. Now, this year, this is where we're at this year. We're still the best VR shooter on the market, arguably, hopefully. We are now at over 200,000 monthly active users, up from 70,000, which is very exciting. And we're at not 1.6 million, but 1.8 million total registered players now, I'm pretty sure, which is pretty exciting growth for the past year. I would say like over double in a year is like really exciting. We still have a high rating. And our main focus this year was kind of just nailing things down, becoming more stable, and continuing to build out the game and everything. So we've been launching monthly skin drops and looking into different monetization strategies. And recently we launched a new tutorial in Kill House, which I was mostly working on. The Kill House is like a timed shooting range for you to practice, and that's an example of us just nailing down the new time user experience to try to make the funnel as wide as possible. And our main focus right now is very mainly the free-to-play extraction mode alpha, which we have been doing weekly play tests for the past month or two. And it's going to be open to everybody soon, and it's very exciting. So right here we have Albert Ovadia, who is the founder and CTO of XLab. He leads all development of Vail. He's a huge Unreal Engine nerd, so he knows many things about Unreal technically. He is also a musical artist and techno DJ under the name of Ood, and he is very cool. I went to a rave of his on Saturday, and it was amazing. Shout out Mad Woman in the crowd as well. She's also a DJ, and she's also extremely talented.
Thank you, Jack.
And he's a pretty cool boss. If you want, these are the links where you can reach him. I think he would be all right with people reaching out. He might get around.
Talk about VR stuff. I already talked to a lot of VR people. I also talk to music people too. And then there's people that are into music and VR. I like those people also.
Yes. And our other guest is JP Minetos, who is an investor and a VR growth strategist. He is involved with all kinds of things such as VR, gaming, metaverse, BCIs, other future technologies, and he's a growth strategist. If there's anyone in the industry who knows how to, make a game successful and see like charts and trends in the industry, he's the guy. He knows a lot, and he's very cool. And on top of all that, he's a huge VR gamer. So, I mean, what could get better than that? Am I right? And he's worked with plenty of people in the industry, plenty of very popular companies and games. Veil, Live, Mentra, GTXR, to name a few. I've personally played No More Rainbows and Battlegrounds and Swordsman. So these are good games. And these are all of his socials as well. If you want to get in contact with him or follow him, see what's up. And me, I'm Jack. I'm a fourth-year computer science major at Georgia Tech, if you don't know. I've been working at X Lab for about 1.5 years, and I'm currently working full-time, taking 2 classes. And what I've been working on recently is programming the tutorial and Killhouse, and that has gone pretty well. And I have competed in 4 XR hackathons, won 3 of them. In my free time, I'm also a VR chat photogrammetry world creator with over 4,000 visits. And here's a number of things that I have also worked on in Veil. And this is my website, jackenglish.net, if you want to get in contact with me. Enough about me. Time for the meat of this beautiful event. And real quick, round of applause for our guests one more time for coming. Again, very cool people. Albert traveled here.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. You got your drinks? You're all hydrated?
Whoa, hold on. I need to get my Coke Zero. Not sponsored, but I wish we were sponsored.
Here you go.
Oh, wait.
No,
Well, that's the
I'll take
backup.
that one.
That's the
backup.
Oh, good thing we had the backup.
Oh, that was the backup.
No,
All
I'm
right.
joking. I'm joking.
Backup
I took it as mine.
We went to the world of Coca-Cola a day or 2 ago. It was very fun.
Yeah, they came from Germany, so it's kind of a big deal. When you're in Atlanta, you have to go see the World of Coke.
Yeah.
Especially with the way they drink it, they pretty much straight IV into the blood.
It was amazing. Yeah, Germany, no one talks about it, but one of the most important things after World War II was, I think Coca-Cola built a couple of headquarters in Germany to reconstruct, fix things, bring Europe back up to spec. It's very important. There's actually these 2 very beautiful Coca-Cola buildings in Berlin, really random. So anyway.
Okay, so this event is being live streamed on the X Lab Twitch, so we will be taking questions from Twitch as well. So if anyone is watching the live stream and you have a question, please feel free to ask. And Ethan, our friend over here, will be
co-president of GTXR, as well as Ryan over there, co-president of GTXR.
Yes, of course. 2 also amazing people being
Ethan
here.
is also really good at Veil. He hasn't played too much lately, but he's one of the top players for a very long time. I feel like we're all like Veil alumni here.
Yeah.
Jack,
Continues to be a competitive Veil player.
I'm gonna turn this towards you guys so they can hear a little better.
That's
Okay.
fine. That's all good. I trust it's working.
Well, they said they can't hear very well this way. So.
All right, we'll speak up then.
Yeah, loud, hot.
All right, Jack, do you have any questions prepared right now? Because
I do.
Okay.
But before, I just want everyone to be thinking, this is an open Q&A panel event, and I want you guys to help shape the event and anything you want to know about. So start thinking about questions about anything you want to know about the gaming industry, the VR gaming industry, how to get hired in the industry, how to have your own successful startup, anything about the future of the industry and the direction it's going, technology, games, anything like that. Cool?
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. So my first question for both of you is, if you had one piece of advice for anyone who is interested in being a developer in the VR space, what would it be?
Enjoy this one.
I guess I'll answer it first. I have a feeling we're going to end up pulling it just so it's a little louder.
All right.
So the question was advice for anyone trying to start in the VR industry. Is that what I understood? You gotta decide what you're obsessed with, I think, because that's the easiest way to win. You gotta be obsessed about something. You're probably already obsessed with something about VR if you're here. or watching this. So whatever you're obsessed with about VR, I think VR or things like VR, you have to be super niche. Because it's not about trying to do everything, because yeah, like even for example, Veil VR, we're 30-something people that work on the game every day, and everybody is relatively like very specialized, and that's the only way you do exciting stuff, whether you go into like research or making products or doing large software projects or whatever people like Georgia Tech do. No matter what you're doing, you're going to be on a team. So trying to be somebody that's really good at everything, it's not super, like, yeah, like I think you're going to stand out by being really, really good at one thing. So whenever there's that one thing, all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, we need that person to do that thing. So yeah, being obsessed with something, and then doing small projects that you're excited about, and putting those online, I think is really cool. There's a lot of people that work on Veil who had done really interesting tech demos or had made small games and published them on Steam, or actually that's a huge thing. Specifically if you're trying to make games, try to make a really small project, something that might only take you X number of weekends or something, like whatever you can fit into your time, and just publish it on Steam or on the MetaQuest store. I say those two because those two have a lot of visibility. You publish there, and you might only get 10 reviews and 100 downloads, and it might feel like no one really cares, but other game developers will play your stuff, and they'll be like, oh wow, this person has like put out a game before, and that's a huge difference. Or if you're making mobile games or any kind of app, just releasing an app that solves a really basic thing, or a game that's like really cool to you that you don't even think anyone else is going to care about, just release something. I think that's the most important thing, actually, because that's a very concrete way of saying like, hey, I can finish a thing. Because the people that don't last on teams tend to be people who can't complete a task. It sounds really ridiculous. So once you've completely shipped an app or game, like you'll have a lot of confidence to be like, hey, I can finish stuff, and people will just, there's an innate respect for that, that we all have as humans, I think, for people that can build things. So I hope I answered the question really well, right?
Yeah, real quick before we go to JP, if you have an answer. You said you wanted to be, you want to have a niche and be good at a very specific thing.
I think so, yeah.
But could you be more specific about that? Because if you're a solo indie developer, you kind of have to be a jack of all trades, and you have to be good at every
jack of all trades. Yeah.
Something I am not, but yeah, you have to be good at like every single aspect of game development. So when you say and of course if you're working at a larger studio, you do want to have a niche. Being very specialized at a specific aspect of game development would help you a lot more in that scenario. But can you elaborate more on having a niche and being good at a specific?
Yeah. So the question there is kind of how do I see the reality of like if you're a solo dev or an indie dev, maybe you're like on a 1, 2, or 3 person team versus being on like a 30 person team or more, and like how do we think about say your question one more time because I want to make sure I understood it. I think I do.
When you said niche, like you want to have a niche that helps you stand out, were you talking about like the specific genre of game that you want to make, or your skill set?
Niche as in skill set and like a thing you can do. Yeah, totally. So for VR games, I'll give you an example, I guess. So I feel like everybody, actually I think the more I think about it, it's really valuable if you're trying to get into VR, if you ship a game. So for example, let's just pretend you are a programmer. You might make a really simple game with a really simple mechanic where you can get a high score, and you can play a game for 5 minutes or whatever, and at the end of it you get a score, and you see where you land on a leaderboard or something. And your art can be horrible, and that's okay. So actually, I think you're right that like you can be really niche, but you do need to know how to glue it all together and make a really basic thing and ship it on your own. Because then at that point, at least, yeah, you need to be able to showcase your work, and you're not going to be able to do it without that. Another one would be if you are an artist, or like an environment artist or level designer, whatever, you make worlds in VR, you would have to learn how to make a super simple thing, like maybe you just walk around the map collecting gold coins, or maybe you just make a walking simulator or something. You make a level, a beautiful level, really showing off that you can make something that runs at frame rate in the headset. You ship it, and you show, hey, you can download my game. It's a walking simulator. I make art, and guess what? It runs really well on the Quest 2. So like, not only is it beautiful, but it actually functions, and it could be a part of a commercially viable product. So you need to figure out a way to showcase your work, but then go deep on the thing that makes you you, that like no one else is going to be able to compete on. And don't even try to be good, just be different, because being good is really hard. So don't bother trying to be good. Being different is like the only way, because there's always someone better at whatever you're trying to do. So, yeah.
Do you have an answer?
Yeah, I'll take on that. And once again, thank you everyone for coming and everyone on the live stream watching this. We're very happy to be here. So I think Albert riffed on a lot of the really good ideas here, but I'll add a little bit more context. If you're thinking about working in VR, which I presume if you're in this room, in this audience, it might be of interest, so this is a good target market. To Albert's point, being able to show that you ship something is really huge. Imagine you're going to work at a studio. They're looking through 1,000 applications, they see these lines of text, they see you got a degree, but that's okay because everybody else got the degree. Like, how can you stand out? Well, showing that you have agency or you've built something, building a portfolio is really, really important. I'll also say that being visible online is super impactful. If you're building things, you should share it. It's costs nothing to share online. So this means making content and posting it on LinkedIn, or if you're a Blender artist for 3D, post this on X. If you know how to do cinematics, make a YouTube video. Make sure to share content around the things that you've been building in your projects, because even if you're not getting a monetary gain from that, you're getting visibility and you're building your own status within the industry that you're someone capable of doing X. And I'll also say that there's a number of different roles available. Right now, the killer use case for VR is games, and specifically for VR, we're not talking XR, MR, AR here, but specifically for VR, I think it is pivotal that, yeah, if you can launch something basic, right, like could it be a game? Yeah, it's a lot easier than you might think, and it's pretty low cost if you have the right tools and equipment. But I would say that the number one thing is visibility. So make yourself visible and put a name to what you've built.
Very good.
Yeah, well, let me just add one thing to that, just because you're saying, like the reason we make games and tech demos and ship things and whatever is to participate in a culture and to show people stuff, because it's fun to show people stuff, because then you enjoy dialogue and you're showing each other stuff and it's exciting. So yeah, I think participating in the culture and like connecting with people, like you brought up, I think that's actually really important, and we forget about that sometimes because we kind of like disappear into our own world. We're like learning how to make a thing, and then you're like 6 months in, you haven't showed it to anybody, so you don't have the full dialogue loop, and you're kind of, that's bad. You need to like show people stuff, you need to talk to people, you need to participate in that, look at other people's stuff, because I learn a lot from looking at other people's stuff too, so I think that's very important.
I'll actually give one example of someone who I think I did it right, and that's our very own Jack here. So I met Jack probably 3 years ago or now, through GTXR, because I live in the area, and he invited me to come hang out, be a judge, get me, someone already in the industry, to come participate with him. And when I met Jack, I was super fascinated because he was already building things in XR, he was spending time in VR chat, you were doing everything with photogrammetry, and you already have a massive leg up if you use the headset. If you're someone who spends time in there, right? If you're hiring for this, for VR, such a unique, novel technology that's not really transferable from other industries, you already have a massive advantage to show that I spent time in the headset and have been able to build things for it. And that's something that helps you, Jack, is, you've already done it before of your own volition. So I would say, making yourself visible, and already, if you're doing things in XR, if you're spending time in the headset and you've thought about things in it and you've solved problems and you have an opinion about it, that already puts you ahead of someone who's never put on a VR headset before.
Yeah, for sure. If it were me, I wouldn't hire anyone at a studio who doesn't want to put on the headset every day. And one quick thing I'll add. You guys are talking a lot about building things and making projects to show people, but as a college student, it can be pretty hard to dedicate time to do that. Of course, everyone knows like more than one project outside of classes can be pretty impossible sometimes. So more specifically, hackathons are huge. XR hackathons more specifically, because it allows you to set aside one weekend specifically, which I find personally to be more helpful in terms of scheduling. And you can dedicate just a weekend straight. The energy is often amazing. You get to work in a team. You get to hopefully finish what you've made in a weekend, which is great when you're tight on time. And you also have the opportunity to win prizes and get awards under your belt you can put on LinkedIn. And I think, hackathons are good.
Yeah, you're able to connect with people in the industry where they're oftentimes the judges of the hackathons are people who actively work. And if you're doubtful to think, oh man, a weekend, can I do something in a weekend? You would be surprised what your peers can do in a weekend. It's really impressive what just a weekend dedication can do.
Yeah, deadlines or lifelines or whatever, they're important. Like putting it into a period of time helps a lot. It's just human nature for some reason. Yeah, and you mentioned hackathons. Hackathons or game jams or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, those are really cool. Also because depending on how you do the game jam or hackathon, normally you end up with at least one other person. So usually you get kind of like an actual distribution of the work, because the other person will be like, oh, I have no idea how to do like UI stuff, and you'll be like, oh, I've done that for a thing, so I'll do the UI stuff. And then like they'll be like, okay, I'll do this, you'll do that, and you kind of spread out. You learn from seeing how they do the approach certain problems, and then next time you're better prepared because you've observed them do. Yeah, you become more well-rounded the more of these you do. And even if you won't be directly doing that work in the future, you just have a stronger sense of how people approach that stuff, so you can plan better, you can interface better with other people. Yeah, it's very important actually. It really does help.
I have a question off of Twitch. So one question here is, how hard is it to develop new ideas whenever there are multiple large ideas? Is there a mediator of some sort to keep things focused?
Keep your scope small, right? Like if you can, don't try to go from A to Z. It's a lot easier to go from A to B, right? And this is something I think you guys could talk a lot about. Building something big and ambitious is hard, and you can often get lost in the weeds. So if you're able to keep your scope small, say like, you guys are now working on, an extraction game mode, something that's really big. This is very cumbersome in VR. In Unreal, there's not many people who have done that, but you guys have worked really hard to get to a place where you can do that, right? Like at first, can you make a character walk around in VR, right?
Yeah,
can you make a gun that works and shoots?
Yeah, that was the early days. It was like, yes. Yeah, it was like, it sounds really silly, but yeah, like early Veil, it was so funny the first like couple of years showing people stuff, and they'd be like, oh, it's just like in a gray room, what am I looking at? And I'd be like, no, but, the gun, and like, and like, anyway, start talking about gunplay features, but whatever, like all the stuff you can do with the guns, whatever, or like, look at the movement, I dialed in the acceleration, and it doesn't make you sick, and the this and the that, and then people would just be like, dude, I don't get it, it's like a gray box with like a gray stick that's a pretend gun, you like, no, people were just like, it was actually really rough the first couple of years showing people stuff, because I kept showing non-gamers also. Well, maybe that was good in some way, but yeah, you have to understand that the first period, all these projects you guys play, or we all play, all these games and stuff, all these big projects you see, they start usually at a large studio with a very small team making the prototype, and it's just a bunch of gray textures. It does not look like a game, but you're working really hard just to get a few basic things working, so like it feels good, and that's kind of the start. And you can do that on your own. You don't need like $100 million and 20 people or 100 people or whatever. Like you can do that. So yeah, I spent like roughly 2 years doing that all on my own. The
That
early days
was
of Vail.
2016 ish.
Yeah, 2016, 2017-ish.
Right, so you've been in it for a decade.
Yeah, I started specifically with VR end of 2014.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, it was, yeah, I think when I started with the multiplayer stuff was like 2016. Oh yeah, and then also, whatever you're going to do, you have to start really small. Yeah, Vail, I started so super, super small, super basic. And even just learning how to do multiplayer stuff early on was really, really hard. So, yeah, just give yourself a lot of space. Try to do one. If you're going to do multiplayer, get a character moving, get whatever your game items are working, and then just figure out how to get 2 players in a world together, playing together. That's already huge. Don't try to make it too complicated. You have to start super small and be okay with that. That's the only way, yeah.
Can I add real quick? I believe part of the question was how to decide and keep like a straight scope when there's multiple conflicting ideas in a studio. And in my experience, I think a good strategy for that is to have one person you trust who is kind of the source of truth, or it's our producer basically. You should have a producer. And everyone of course will have a bunch of ideas and opposing things, and there is a ton of time that gets wasted, if you would call it wasted, discussing new features and the direction things should go. But what I find personally helpful is just kind of trusting a specific person to tell me what to do and just kind of focusing on my own part. I'm pretty strongly, I'm opinionated about specific things, but sometimes it's better for my sanity to just, do what's on my checklist and like let other people worry about the direction a little bit. Yeah. Do we have any questions in the room?
Hi, so I'm Alexa.
Hi, Alexa.
Hello. I've always had like an interest in like video game development, obviously, and then the past couple years I've been really trying to do what both of you have recommended. Like in the past year or so, I've been been trying to build things to get those like projects under my belt, kind of thing. And I'm doing 2 games this semester, and one of them I'm sort of trying to lead a group of people through that. So I'm wondering how I was just wondering to hear your input on like leading in the video game development space. Like what advice you would give around that?
Sure, so Alexa's question is, so yeah, for context, you've been working on small game projects for the past year or so.
Yeah.
You're working on one right now, and you've got some people together, so you have a small team.
Yeah.
Are you the person realizing the game, as in like directing the game, or like it's your idea?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did group. It's outside of our class.
Oh, it's outside? Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
I'm doing 2 projects, so this is a project separate from ours. But yeah, so we did group ideation. So I'm the one that has developed a game in the past with the video game development club.
Mhm.
So I sort of had some knowledge of how to do it. So now I'm leading a group of kind of more inexperienced people. So I was just wanting to know like some
Yeah.
advice in that.
Yeah, so you're leading a small team, trying to realize a game project, a small project. I'm guessing it's something you guys are trying to get done in less than 6 months, whatever it is, right?
A semester, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're trying to get a small project done in a small amount of time with a small team, I think it's really important for one person to try to be the one herding the cats, and and to spend a lot of time and be okay with like a lot of social negotiation, and like be okay with the fact that you're going to have to kind of explain a lot and convince a lot, because for sure, in my experience, the super strong arm leadership style doesn't seem to work very well.
When you're making art, it's not fun.
Yeah, also, yes, we work on games. So the thing is, it actually has to be fun, because otherwise it's not fun, and then guess what? The game ends up not fun. So yeah, you have to be comfortable with a lot of slippage on time, and yeah, estimating on timelines for games is really, really brutal. So you kind of have to create an environment where you have super basic tiny goals, and every day you guys create value together, and it's a little bit better every day. No big goals like, oh, we're gonna have this in 2 weeks. That's not gonna work. You gotta have tiny little goals, and everyone has to learn to work in SIPs together and submit work a lot, and then you create all these little loops. And then you put together a build a few times a week or whatever, and then you compare it to the build from a week prior, and you're like, oh wow, we did a lot of stuff, this is cool. But you have to do that. And then also it helps because if everybody is continuously submitting, and you're trying to do a build every day if possible, then everybody knows their changes work together, and they can all play the latest build, and it's like, oh, this is working, or oh, I did this, but you forgot to put the button for me, so my thing doesn't work, or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the thing that really helps keep it going is really tiny goals, everybody submitting incremental work every day, and no big goals. Like, you don't want someone being like, oh, I'm working on that for the next 5 days on my own computer, no one's gonna see it, because they'll just go off track so much, and maybe make something that like isn't even compatible with what everybody else is working on. So I hope that helps. But yeah, really tiny sips, a lot of little sips, convince everybody, and then also when you start doing that, you stop arguing about things as much. And I say arguing just like, you know, debating and whatever, because everybody is submitting and creating value, and then instead of spending so much time talking, you're doing a lot, and then everyone can speak more intelligently about whatever the next step is, because everybody's like super in sync, adding value every day, and then you're just like kind of pushing together, and you're all rowing together. So I hope that helps. Did that kind of answer it?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's the most important thing. Tiny little sips every day. That makes a big difference, because that is one thing I've seen over and over again. People create these timelines like, this is what we will accomplish in the next 6 to 8 months, and then it's like, week 1 we will have this, week 6 we will have this, but it's like, dude, in between all that time, oh no, this is like totally gonna go off the rails real quick, yeah.
So maybe just one other thing to support Alexa's question, and I'd like to hear your answer to this, Albert, is say she's in charge of the game, she's the de facto director here, and
Yeah.
Alexa says, hey, I have a vision that the game goes this way, and someone on her team says, no, I think that's wrong, we should be doing it this way. How do you deal with that?
So there's
Happened before. Yeah.
ways to deal with it. There's ways to deal with it. So one of the easiest ways to deal with it is, because everybody's like submitting work continuously and everything is in small sips, you can be like, okay, I'll give you like 2 or 3 ways to deal with it. You can be like, okay, do the thing, let's all play it. And then they do the thing, you all play it tomorrow, and then everybody starts talking about it, and they're like, yeah. And now since it was only like 1 day of work, because they did the most basic version of the thing, they can, like, you guys can just talk about it way better, and like, things just kind of reveal themselves. And then maybe what you thought was a thing, maybe your ideas change too, that's cool too. So, yeah, because that is one danger, is where people fall into these loops, like arguing and discussing and over planning and like making all these like presentations, and it's like, no, just make the thing, write code, put art in there, jam it in there. You know, sometimes, especially in VR, you don't realize how bad something is until you try the thing in VR, and then you're like, this is silly, this doesn't work. You know, like, I don't know, like maybe you're like basing everything around this idea that you're gonna have these really long swords in the game, I don't know, making something up. And then you add the really long sword into the game, and then you realize the mechanics are really bad and it feels really wrong. And you're like, this isn't fun, because if for the game to feel responsive, the sword has to be basically attached to my controller, but now it feels weightless. And then if we make it big and heavy, like, now it feels really, and then you start talking about it, and you're like, this is just bad, or something. You're like, oh wait, we should make our game all daggers. I don't know, I'm making this stuff up, but like, you start to realize these things. But if you spend like 3 months making all this really beautifully textured long sword art,
Yeah.
and then people are like making all these presentations and all this concept art, and they put, what's the saying? You put the carriage before the horse, or the horse before the carriage? I forget. Yeah, horse before the carriage. If you do all that stuff for, like, now the stakes are so high, people are like, oh, well, you said this is what you wanted, and this is what we were doing, and like, I spent 2 months texturing this thing, and then you're like, so yeah, I think tiny little steps the whole way through. It kind of like removes a lot of that stress and it makes everything work better. What do you think? Does that make sense?
I think yeah, I agree.
So,
So, yeah.
in conclusion, you want as fast of iteration time as possible, and if people have strongly opposing opinions, they should both implement it and see which one is actually.
Yeah, that can work. Yeah, because at the end of the day, everybody wants the thing to be good. Now, of course, as the person leading the project, you need to have a tiny bit of foresight, and it is at the end of the day sort of your responsibility to resolve it and bring it all together. It needs to make sense, and you need to have a tiny bit of foresight. But you need to have some flexibility, because if you don't, if people are working on a feature or on a thing for the game and they're not convinced, it's just, yeah, people need to, it's really hard, but you need to keep people excited about what they're working on. And that's like a very long topic, and it's very hard, because also video working on games or any software project has like a lot of ups and downs and emotional swings, because you got lost working on the thing months at a time, and you're like, does this thing matter? Is it good? Is it not good? You know, you're like, oh, then you realize, wait, us 4 people have been working on this for X number of months. We haven't shown this to anybody. You show it to like 10 friends, and they're like, dude, I don't get it. Like, is this a game? Wait, is this actually a game? Wait, what do I do and you're like, what? Like, what? What do you mean you don't get it? And then you realize you put all the buttons in the wrong place. It doesn't, like, you realize all these things. Yeah, so, I don't know. Game dev's hard. There you go.
That's a good answer.
That's the whole story.
Do we want to take a question from Chat?
Yeah, we have a question from Rev741. How hard is it to make audience/players engage in the new content that you push out?
Rev741's asking about how hard it is to get players to engage in new content.
In new content.
As it gets rolled out for like a game as it grows.
Mm.
Yeah,
Gotta make it better.
actually, I want to actually hear what because I've had a lot of experience with this too, but I'm curious what JP thinks about games that like, what do you think about, going into this question, games that have been out for a year or 2, they're past that initial launch energy, and they're expanding the offering? Like, is that a topic with some games? Because that is a bit of a fear, like musicians have, for example. They're like, I put out the album, if I put out this next album, it's kind of different. I might lose my other audience. Will I be going sideways, growing, or declining? So like, games are kind of like that, because you can actually really upset your existing player base. That's a thing. I don't know, is that a topic in all the games you've talked to?
It's a very important topic, actually. So when you're thinking about games, you're thinking about the data and usage of games. There's one metric that's really important, and it's called retention. You guys have probably heard of retention, or you've seen a retention curve. And what it essentially means is what percentage of players who played the game come back and play the game again, right? And this is the golden metric that a lot of developers look for, is total installs or sales, and then retention. Do they not only play the game, but do they stay around and stick out for more? And there's this term you guys might have heard, it's popular in AAA, called live service, right? Live service is adding continual updates or DLC to the game. And yes, it's very important to think about this and think about how the audience is going to behave to it. I'll say that the answer to this question really depends on what type of game it is. And I'll speak specifically for the example for VR. And you guys can actually talk a lot about this in Vail, which is in a ongoing development with new content all the time, including now Extraction soon. I will say that what I see work best in retention design and live service for games is figuring out what is not only the core loop of what players are doing, but what do players most enjoy in your game, right? Sometimes if it was a competitive shooter, maybe it's more maps, right? Maybe that's actually players just want more maps because they're going to come back and play it. Or maybe it's new guns. Sometimes it's new weapon skins. You find that it's cosmetics, right? Take Counter-Strike, for example. Counter-Strike is a storied game. It's 20 years old. People play the same 5 maps for the last 20 years, right? And anytime there's a new map added, everyone gets pissed off, right? That's not what they want. It's a solved game. It's like chess. But what people really love is the cosmetics, right? The skin economy, the knives, being able to have new finishes. So for Counter-Strike, they found that the best thing that they can do is add that, right? And then sometimes new experimental side modes. One other part that just goes with retention design that I think should happen is what I've seen with VR games and successful VR games and moderately successful ones is adding live service to a game. If there's already not a core player base who loves it, it doesn't typically save the game, right? So if you have a certain baseline of audience, you'll be able to retain those users who love it from it, but it's very rare that a new update, unless it's a complete drastic overhaul, is going to meaningfully change the market size of the game. So I would figure out what your audience likes to play, what aspects of it do they really love, and then just add more of that while keeping everything else the same.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's one heck of a question, because so many game studios have this thing they're presented with internally that's not always like super obvious, where like you guys have all played live service games, like games that run 5, 7, 10 plus years. They keep adding seasons, they keep adding stuff. At some point, they kind of have to decide, and it takes a lot of conviction and long-term commitment, and it's kind of wild, but they have to decide, do we split out and make a whole new app, a whole new game with a whole new marketing? Because also when you ship a new game and it's new, it's the new cool thing, there's a lot of novelty around it, there's a lot of marketing built in, so you get a really nice boost. Some studios have completely maximized on this, like, I don't know, like for example, the Call of Duty franchise, it's built into their business model. It's just expected at this point. They will come out with a new game at minimum every few years, and they'll have a huge initial marketing campaign, a huge sales campaign, and on the other extreme end, you'll have Counter-Strike, where they have this amazing thing, very dialed in after many years. And basically anything they add upsets players, but also Counter-Strike needs to keep getting new players, making more money, and finding ways to get more of the shooter pie without upsetting the slice of the pie they already dominate. And it's a weird topic, but it's a very important topic, especially if you do all the work and your timing is good and you've been waiting in line long enough, you get to a point where you have a game that's working, you have some success, and then you have to kind of decide, like, do we expand the studio and make more games? Or do we keep adding to our one game? And that's something XLab's gone through. Like, our conviction is extremely high on, we're gonna figure out how to add more and more stuff to the game and not upset our pre-existing players. So we've added all these different modes of play, and we will continue to add them, but it's a really, really hard balance.
Can I share something on Veil? Right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Veil's a very interesting example. So if you guys haven't played Veil before, previously it was a competitive shooter. That was the core aspect of the game. It was hardcore, it was gritty, had a high skill ceiling on what you could do. And previously Veil was a premium game, meaning that you had to pay to buy it. And you would come in and you would play search and destroy type game modes. That was the basic idea of Veil. But what was happening is that there was a cohort of players who were really, really good. And so when a new player came in, they would get demolished, right? And they would have a terrible experience because they're playing against someone who has 100 hours in the game, and they're not gonna be able to have fun. And that's gonna kill the retention of the new user coming in. So what you guys are doing at XLab, and this is something I spoke with Jonathan a lot about, is, what really works in Veil? Like, what do people like? Well, VR is very social. It's one of the most social gaming products. And so why doesn't Veil lean more into social? So the switch that you guys made last year was making the game free to play, but the combat experience, the people that really love that core combat experience, that's still in the game, and that's still behind the paywall. But now, when you boot into the game, you get to see the beautiful graphics, you get to have the guns, and you're in an innately social experience, right? And you get to do mining. So they took what really worked, that everyone loved about the game, focused heavy on that, while still serving that core combat audience.
Yeah, and by doing that, yeah, the reason we leaned so heavily into that stuff was because we wanted to create this sort of on-ramp. So we had the main game, we realized it was kind of hardcore. So we created we worked a lot on the social experience, so people can go into the social experience, go to a shooting range, hang out with people. It's basically like a super glorified playground or chat room. But they can spend time moving around, learning the basic mechanics of the game, a little bit of time on the gun, spending time getting just comfortable in the world. And then, once they're comfortable, they're maybe just exactly at that point where they can go get Veil Combat, which is something you pay for, and then play the bigger game or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so that's how we approached that. It's like, okay, we're not going to detract from this big main thing that is the core game already. We're going to add something that kind of funnels players into it, but
Right.
anyone can enjoy.
Right, and anyone can come and enjoy. Someone who has 100 hours in the game, someone who has first impression of the game. And then they can make that switch whenever. And that skill gap that was there previously doesn't exist anymore. It's not really an issue.
Right. Yeah, so, yeah, and to get to that idea, that was like 1,000 conversations, basically.
Yeah.
And it's weird because now, like, looking back, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, there's another programmer, a friend of mine, and he calls it having, like, I'm messing up his words, but he calls it something like the blue ocean problem, as when projects are early and small, you're just kind of like on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and you're like, I can go anywhere. Where do I go? And then he says that at some point you're no longer blue ocean, you're like on land, and like, you know, there's not that far to go. You kind of have to just like build your little camp, and you start building your village, and like this is where you're staying. So yeah, early on, the big vast blue ocean, it can be very overwhelming, but yeah, you have to try to make some decisions early on, I guess.
Do you have any more questions in the room?
Yes. Like, I guess sort of related a little. I guess what would you say is like an important thing to consider, or like important things to consider when you're designing for like VR as a medium, as opposed to more traditional mediums for games like 2D games or things like that? Like, because I guess my experience in VR has been like a lot of times I've thought of stuff or I've worked on things and I felt that maybe I'm just trying to make a regular game and just putting it in VR and it doesn't like take advantage of the medium. So I guess what are some like advice you have for like working with VR to enhance the experience rather than just having it as like just kind of being there and being like cumbersome?
Could you repeat it really quick?
Yeah, we can read it back.
You want to read it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so if I understood correctly, yeah, the question is, how does one approach specifically VR games, and is there anything one has to think about are there salient differences between a pancake game and VR games that you have to have in mind, because otherwise you'll end up making some really weird mistakes? Because I mean, I can begin to answer the question, but I think all three of us will have a lot to say about that. There's a lot to think about.
We'll get some rapid fire ones,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So here's some rapid fire ones. Essentially, am I making a game for VR or am I just making a general flat game? Like, really, what's the difference here? Would you say that was the question, right? Well, you have to think about what are the limitations of VR, right? What are the differences? One, the audience is completely different. Right now, the killer use case for VR is games. This is something I very much believe in, that this is where the most traction is. And it's a very young audience who's in VR right now, generally. It is mixed gender, but it's about 70% boys, 30% girls, mostly teenagers. That's a huge cohort. So one, you have to think the age demographic. Another one is comfort and usage and battery life. You know, you can't play a 8-hour game in VR. Most session times are around 30 to 45 minutes. So you have to think, can I build like a gameplay loop that fits into there? So take Civilization, for example, or another big world building game where you sit behind and playing something for 6 hours. That doesn't really work in VR. And even if I was in VR, there's not really an advantage for me to be in it. Right now, I have to deal with the sweat and discomfort of being in VR. Right, at that point, well, I would just download it on Steam and play on my computer. What I really like to think about VR is it's the closest device we have to teleportation, to be in another world. And so if you can embody another player, right, if you can embody being in that existence, those are typically the experiences I think do best in virtual reality. We've had the market around long enough now where people really try to do a lot of different things. What we found consistently works well is player embodiment. Can you make the player feel like they are in the other world, right? They're not sitting from a third person, but they're first person, they are in the world. As part of the teleportation, it's social first. You can feel like you're interacting with another person inside that world. So you get that, you can't really get that on a flat screen game. And then the other part is it should be a unique to VR experience. Say, if you're familiar with Gorilla Tag, you guys have probably heard of Gorilla Tag. It's the biggest VR game and probably the most important one because it is the biggest. Something that they did really well was solving locomotion and doing something unique to VR. So in Gorilla Tag, for anyone who's not familiar, you don't move with your feet or with a joystick. You swing your arms like how Albert's doing, and you're a gorilla that uses your arms to move. And so that right there solves so much of the locomotion issues and that sickness. And it makes it where you're using your body to move the character, and it feels very natural and it feels very intuitive. Another game that did this well with unique to VR mechanics is the classic Beat Saber game, right? You can't play Beat Saber without VR. It doesn't make sense. You can't swing your arms. You're not going to have the same experience pressing A and D on your keyboards. And so, like, having these games that really couldn't be ported to a flat screen, that have all the other prerequisites, are in general what I would say makes for a best VR game.
Damn, yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because even just from a consumer perspective, they want to know that they're doing something kind of exciting that's either just obviously more comfortable in VR or they're going to feel more overpowered and amazing in VR. Like, it has to be something that it's not going to be as great non-VR. Otherwise, you're kind of, you want to maximize the medium. It's so true. For example, in shooters, I have played VR shooters where you just press a button on the controller to reload and then like an animation reloads the weapon for you. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think people want to, like, no, that's obviously a paradigm from console or PC. Why are we doing this? And then you find out why they're doing it. It's because the whole team working on the game came from 20 plus years of making console and PC games, and then you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, you have to definitely break free of any PC or console like old school paradigms. You need to do VR first things, and I understand that might be really hard for a lot of people, especially if you've already been making games that are non-VR for a while. Yeah, I've noticed people repeat a lot of patterns from that. I totally get it. But you have to break free of that. It has to be super VR, otherwise it's just not going to be as exciting.
And avoid screens in VR. If you can make it a 3D object you interact with rather than looking at a screen with a laser, that is always the preferred option.
Oh yeah, that's a subtle but important thing. Yeah, because a lot of people go for diegetic things in VR.
You want to explain what diegetic means?
Yeah, like diegetic means like something that's grounded in the world. So yeah, like you'll walk up to a thing. So there's a lot of ways that you can interact with things in VR.
So like an example of like diegetic design that would be unique to VR, and let's just say the flat screen comparison. So I don't know if you guys can see, I have like a Coke Zero down here. In a flat screen game, I would look at it, my invisible laser would go and see it, I press E to pick up, it's added to my inventory, right? That's that interaction. But in VR, well, I actually have the ability to come down and use my hand, and I'll press my grab button on my controller, and I'll come pick it up. And I put it in my inventory, it's on my back. I stick it in my backpack.
Yeah, so that's a fully diegetic interaction. And that's funny you mention that because I've seen this in some VR games and it kind of really bothers me. So in some VR games, you'll walk over things just to pick them up. Or I have actually seen press this button to add to your inventory and I'm just like, oh no, this is so bad, I'm in VR, no, don't do that, like, no. So yeah, like there's certain things that in VR, if you abstract to them, like for example, just walking over a thing and it just like magically goes into your inventory, that can be actually really confusing for the player. When you're on console walking over an item and you see it got picked up and what, like, I don't know, it's weird, but there's just some things that are really normal for non-VR, and there's some things that in VR it's just confusing, so.
And a lot of things you'll notice with really well-designed VR games is that they're intuitive. As in, someone doesn't need to be a gamer to understand, right? Anyone could comprehend. If you're wearing a backpack and you see a bottle on the ground, you can understand to pick it up and put it in your backpack. And a really good VR game understands that, where you could just pick something up and put it in your backpack. Or you see a menu in front of you, you see a computer terminal, yeah, you could just go press enter on the terminal and type something in there.
Yeah, I think maybe that is a huge thing, just in VR, thinking about all those really simple interactions and making sure that you're getting those right. Because once you get a lot of those small interactions right, it kind of builds up and it really adds to the presence and immersion where people start to feel like, oh, it's fun to pick up stuff in this experience. It's fun to, point the gun and do the thing or play with the wand or whatever your thing is in your game. That's actually really important. Those are things that really upset me when I play some VR games where I'm just like, why did they abstract to this? Now, there are things that are fun to abstract away because there's certain small things that are just not fun to do, so you can figure out a way to take those away, but yeah, like you're saying, like collecting things, looting, putting things in your bag, those interactions are actually things players really like a lot.
I will say it's rare, but it is possible to take it a little too far with physical interaction. And everything we're talking about has some element of personal preference, but there are some VR shooter games where you have to manually like craft ammo and manually put bullets into a magazine, and you have to do this every single time you want to shoot a magazine. And like, in my opinion, things like that aren't fun, they're tedious, and there's a reason why basically any VR game you play these days with picking up objects in the world, there's force grab, because no one actually wants to lean over and pick up something off the ground. And so every VR game, if you don't know it nowadays, you can look at something on the ground like within a couple feet of you and you just grab it and it flies into your hand.
But that still is a natural interaction, right? It's just an extension to say, all right, yes, I want to pick this up off the ground, that's intuitive, but also I don't want to bend over and hurt my back. So if I could have the ability to have the force for 3 feet and not have to move and it shows up my hand, then I do it. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, general rule of thumb, if you can not do it on a flat screen game and do it in VR, that's great. And then go spend time in VR games and figure out the interactions that you like the most or felt the most intuitive, and then add that to your game.
Yeah, and actually a nice thing about force grab as an example is you make a player feel more powerful, and at the same time you're making them more comfortable.
Yeah.
So you're making them feel more awesome, and they can be even lazier while doing it and more comfortable, so it's like a super win. Anything you can do in VR that's really comfortable, they can do it over and over again and be really happy with. Like, these are good things, but they're very small things. And then just to round out the whole answer, because you asked about 2D versus VR and kind of the important differences. Thrill Seeker on YouTube has a really good video on this subject, and he had interviewed me for it. This was like easily a year ago now, or more, or maybe a year and a half ago. I forgot, 2 years ago. It's been a while. But it's a really good video, and he talks about a lot of things. Another thing that a lot of 2D games get super wrong, VR games get super wrong, that bugged me a lot, is scale, where like you walk up to stuff in VR and it's just obviously the wrong size. Because even if you put like an 8-year-old kid into a VR headset, they do have a sense of how big a doorway is, or how big a baseball bat is supposed to be, or these things. Depending on the art style, you can get away with a lot of stuff, but if you want to just play it safe, generally correct and proper human skill, plus or minus 5 or 10%, is going to get you further, and you're going to have better presence and stuff. An obvious thing would be if the player is like an ordinary height human, but all of the doorways in your game are the size of like elf-sized doorways. It's just going to be really weird, because as you walk through the doorways, you're going to subconsciously feel like you have to crouch, or you're going to feel uncomfortable like you're about to hit your head as you go through things. So these are like subtle things that I see in a lot of VR games that really bother me, and I'm just like, why are they doing this? Or in some VR games, I look down and I look at my feet, and they look like they're this big, like very, very small, and it just kind of like, it's uncanny, and I don't like it. Yeah, sure.
We should move on to the
Yeah,
next
for
question.
sure.
Okay.
For sure, we can. Yeah.
Another in-person question? Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask, when creating the startup, I'm sure the idea is the most important. So can I ask, like, what inspired you guys to make Veil a VR game? And did you consider other ideas, such as like a non-VR game, or maybe just even a traditional tech startup idea? And the second part to the question is, how are you able to raise money in the early parts or beginnings of the startup?
Sorry to repeat that really quick for people on the live stream. The question was,
Why did you choose to build in VR in your startup? Why did you choose VR or flat versus you just building a regular tech startup? And then how did you raise money for that?
Damn, JP's good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to steal.
Where'd you get all
information.
that short-term memory from? Was it from like first-person shooters?
Yes, it's from.
Because there's actually research that shows that short-term memory of like hardcore FPS gamers is better.
Spending all my teenage years gaming, yes, it's paid off.
Yeah, I had a feeling. So yeah, no, great question, by the way. Yeah, I totally get that question. It's funny because depending on the era, there's kind of the thing for every era. So the joke is, so a long time ago, like I'm kind of just thinking about what I've seen in my life. A long time ago, everybody wanted to be in a band. So everybody's like, I gotta start a band. Then it was like, oh wow, the Apple App Store, like everybody's gotta make an app or something. Then it was like, oh, I gotta make an indie game. And then and then there was like, at some point there was this obsession, I don't know, this like Forbes 30 under 30 thing happened or something, and then you had like tech startups, and then you had like Theranos or something. So yeah, then everybody wanted to be a tech founder. And now everyone wants to make a thing to sell ChatGPT tokens, or whatever the thing is now. So now there was a tiny little moment where everybody wanted to make a VR tech startup. There was like a moment where VR was the hot thing.
Right, and this is right at your time when this is starting. So for context, Palmer Luckey was the guy who created Oculus as a company, and he made the first real consumer VR headset, the DK1. And within 2 or 3 years of founding it, he ended up selling it to Facebook, now Meta, for I think $2 billion. So there was this moment, this brief moment where it looked like we were going to move away from phones and other traditional forms of computing, and we were all going to go to VR.
Yeah. So there was that, and around that time, I got excited because I always wanted to make a first-person shooter, but I felt like I had nothing to say in the genre just because there was already Counter-Strike. And I loved Counter-Strike. Then, the electric guitar was invented. This is VR, I don't know. Actually, I think VR is way cooler than any guitar, to be honest. But, so yeah, then we got VR. And that was like, that's kind of like going from the silent films to the talkies, or whatever they called it at that time, right? Like, it's like movies without sound, and then movies with sound. And that completely changed everything. No one wanted to see movies without sound anymore, I guess. So yeah, the idea is that I saw VR as this huge paradigm shift, and I got really into VR, and then I was like, oh my God, now I can make the first-person shooter I always wanted to make. I feel like I have something to say, and I am, like everybody else that's making tech demos or things about this, I was convinced they totally had it wrong, otherwise I wouldn't have made a new thing. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is, you have to be excited and you have to feel like you have something to say. Whatever it is, if you're gonna make a new app, you have to be like, I am going to make the best calorie tracking app. Everybody else has got it wrong. You gotta be like, I am going to make the best first-person shooter. And then yeah, also feasibility kicks in. So the other thing about VR was that since it was such a small market when I first got into it, I felt like I could actually make an impact. So you have to, it has to be something you're obsessed with, you're excited about, and you have to pick a space where you feel that you can actually achieve impact. So VR was so small, I knew that even with a small amount of money and resources and a small amount of time, I could actually have an impact. And by the way, I still think that's the case today. I think VR is incredibly small today. It's still so early, objectively speaking, if you zoom out, I feel. I mention that just because sometimes people have come up to me and they've been like, oh, it's so easy for you because you got in so early. And I'm like, no, dude, like, I'm super zoomed out on this. This is still really early. In fact, it's frustratingly early because if it wasn't so early, there would just be way more headsets out there and Vail would be super profitable or something. It's still very early, I'm telling you this, based on, he could probably tell you more about that, but yeah, so it's still very early. It has to be feasible. You have to know you're going to make a big impact. You have to have something to say. I think these things are important. It's not just about picking, printing out a list of top 10 tech startup ideas, and then being like, oh, I'm going to pick number one and I'm going to make a whole tech startup around that. No, it has to be something you're actually obsessed about. The good news is, even if the thing you're obsessed about, you feel like it's kind of niche, as long as you feel that you have something to say and that you can have impact in that weird thing you're obsessed with, run with that idea and you'll be surprised, but there's other people that also are obsessed with that weird small thing. There's so many companies that are underappreciated, in all those magazine covers or whatever, but millions of people use every day, or millions of people play every day. So don't just get obsessed with the fancy, shiny tech startup stuff you see on TV or whatever. Whatever you actually are obsessed with, whatever you want to make that you know you should be doing, do that. You might have a much larger audience than you think. Yeah.
And I'll just quickly add something, just to be relatively expedient for time. When it comes to the fundraising aspect, as you shouldn't want to be a founder for the sake of being a founder. This is something that's happened relatively recently, where becoming a tech founder is become very high status, and because it's high status, people chase it just for the glory of having it, rather than wanting to solve an issue. So your goal should never be, oh, I want to start a startup, I want to be a startup founder. It's, I want to build something so great that I don't want to focus on anything else. And then as for the fundraising side of things, what I've seen time and time again is it's really obsessive founders that are able to raise, where they are building and they're also not asking for permission. They're not saying, I'll start building this once I raise $500,000 for my pre-seed. No, this is the person who's working their day job and they're spending all their weekends working on this thing, and they dive into a point where it builds and works, and now they need 100K to be able to get to the next step. That kind of founder is going to have a way easier time raising, and a good investor is able to see that, than the one saying, oh, I might quit my job if I was able to raise, and then I'd start a company, and I think I would do it in this area. But having extreme conviction and being able to deliver regardless of funding would be the best way to raise.
Yeah, by the way, that's huge, because you're going to do so much stuff with so much pain for free, with nobody caring about it for so long. Please just pick something you're actually obsessed with. and realized that yeah, like basically you got to make the thing for so long and just do the thing because yeah, all this like tech founder stuff. I've met people that it'll sound silly, but like I can't control myself, but like I giggle. Like I meet people and they're like, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm on my 12th startup, and I'm just like I can barely handle one thing. Like I've been doing this one thing for about 10 years, and I still don't have it figured out. So I'm just thinking like, whenever I read these articles about, or I have met these quote unquote serial entrepreneurs, and they're telling me about how they're on their 12th company, like I don't know about all that stuff. It might be real, it might not be, but what I do know is real is if you pick one thing and you're obsessed with it and you're doing whatever it takes and you're pouring your own time into it, maybe you have a job or 2 jobs and this is your 3rd thing and you're figuring it out. At a certain point, as long as you stick to it, you're basically just waiting in line to be successful. You just can't give up. But the only way you're gonna make it to whatever the next step is by being obsessed with it. You really have to pick something you're obsessed with. Like, don't start Googling like, oh, best tech startup ideas 2025 or something. That's not gonna work. It has to be something that has to come from inside of you.
Yeah, you should ask yourself, if I knew I had to dedicate the opportunity cost of 10 years of my life to this, and I have a 90% chance of nothing to show for it, would I still want to do this? If your answer is yeah, then maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly the case, because that's another thing. You start off, I remember when I first started this game, I thought I was gonna have like a fully featured thing. I had like a plan, it was gonna be like 18 months, I had these ideas. I'm like 10 years in and I still don't even have half of what I had hoped to happen. So like, this stuff takes way longer. So yeah, you have to be obsessed with what you're doing, and yeah, that's really the number one thing. It's like, do I want to be doing this for the next 10 years? Because without realizing it, that's what ends up happening. Talk to a lot of people. Don't just talk to 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds or 50-year-olds that are successful. Talk to all age groups. Try to talk to people across a few industries, not just software. I think a good median, you're gonna see, I think in most cases, people need at least 7 years to achieve liftoff on whatever the heck they're doing. I know people obsess over these like, it looks like, ooh, overnight 2-year thing or something, but that's not the norm. You have to strap in and know that it might take you 10 years just to get to the point where the thing barely begins to function. So it has to be something you're obsessed with. That's like actually really important. Because luckily, I did this not only because I was crazy, but because I was obsessed. Because otherwise I would have never stuck with it. Because like, I didn't make any money. Nobody was paying me the first few years. Like, this took way longer. This was painful. I stayed up late and got sick working on this. Like, I would have never done this if I wasn't obsessed, right?
Yeah.
Question from Twitch?
No new questions.
All right. Anything else? We can rapid fire. Anyone have anything different?
Well, I'd love to know, because the VR seems so interesting as a new sort of medium, as a new like art form almost, if that makes sense. And like if you think like, okay, a writer, you have in your mind, you know what a writer sort of is, or a photographer or whatever. Like, who are these VR people? Like, as opposed to a filmmaker. Like what are the personality traits? A cook has a good sense of smell and taste. You know, a filmmaker has the vision. What does a VR person have? You know?
I think a really good VR, maybe I'll say VR game software. That's the word.
Can you restate the question just because?
Yes, essentially you see patterns of characteristics in creatives or certain people. There's a certain archetype for a writer, certain archetype for a musician, certain archetype for an actor. What is that for someone creating in VR? Is that fair?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Well, one, I would say there are multiple archetypes for each one of those categories. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution. But when it comes to VR games, what I've seen time and time again is the best founders in the space are actually really good sociologists. Because they understand the social dynamics at work of what drives someone to make a decision in a game, like why do they play it, what do they have fun doing, and how do they interact with others, and then how do they find meaning within that experience. So generally, I find that they understand. And actually, your co-founder Jonathan, I remember he gave a really good point on this one time. Something that he shared with me probably half a decade ago was when thinking about progression in the game, when they were designing the game, he realized that most of the people playing it were kids who didn't have a job, and that playing Vale or playing games was their full-time job. So why don't we make it feel like they're working? And then you realize, you guys have heard the meme, the children yearn for the mines, right? The kids want to work, they want to find meaning in it. And that was a huge breakthrough for Vale.
Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, VR, everything that's ultra successful in VR, and the thing that creates the most human connection in VR, and the thing, all the games and projects people speak about the most, I feel they have this very strong, curated social experience, and all the people making these different games and experiences in VR they have made these really awesome observations about what players want, and they know what players want before players even want it. So, for sure, I think that introduction to cultural anthropology class might be really useful for VR developers. Any sociology class. It's weird, but especially once you start making your initial VR app or game and you start showing it to people, you make so many observations. And if you're excited by that feedback loop, that's one of the traits. Actually, all VR developers have that in common. They've put a lot of people in VR and they learned a lot from that. And they can talk for hours about that because you realize so many things through that process. You have to be very excited by that. And I've noticed, Jack knows about this too. So yeah, for sure. And then something all those people you mentioned, by the way, whether it's a chef, a comedian, an author, or whatever, they all have something to say, and they're all finding kind of their own way to bring that to an audience. And that's really tough because it's kind of like giving birth. Like whether it's finishing a book, finishing a movie, and then all these people are marketing what they're doing also, because the only authors you hear about, they were exactly likable enough to get an editor and a publisher and whatever. These things are very hard. It's very rare that you have any type of artist or creator achieve liftoff in a vacuum in a basement, right? So yeah, all of these people have to interact with the real world. That's another layer. Being comfortable with putting yourself out there, I think, is really rough.
Yeah, I think all these people would be okay if they were to launch something, and then people come back and they say, I hate it, it's terrible. And then they're able to say, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, like the chef would be, they each would handle this, and it's a part of the job, kind of, actually, right. And they can handle
take the
it.
feedback.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know we're over time, so we want to...
Yeah.
There's a question, but if...
Speedrun.
Last one.
All right, speedrun. Does having a degree or certificate make a significant impact to your work resume, or is having real experience more valuable? Who's a stronger hire, someone who spends 4 years to get a bachelor's degree in the field, or someone who spends those 4 years making games, programs, website to prove their capability?
30 seconds.
Yeah, actually, can you do the 30 seconds first based on your observation? Because you've dealt with so many companies and founders. I'm just curious because I already know my answer. I'm very curious about yours.
Yes, I think you should always have a bias towards action, and people are interested in seeing that you are capable of creating something or doing something. I would say I always enjoy working more with people who have done something before rather than theorizing or hypothesizing it happening. Not to say the degree is useless, it's always a good way to get your door in, but everyone is going to have a degree. Not everyone is capable of actually building something and showing it. And I think that always gives you a huge edge, and I always choose the person who has built things over the ones that had a degree that says they could theoretically build things.
100%, totally echo that. And another thing I'll mention is earlier in my career, like a lot of the people that I was engaging or courting as collaborators, whatever, I used to value intellectual capability way too much. I learned the hard way that it's way more about finding the people you really connect with and that you love the things they've already made in the past, and that they have a portfolio. And many of the people who work on Veil, by the way, as an example, we have a really huge range. Like, we have people that I think didn't finish high school, and we also have people with PhDs working on Veil. And I'm pretty sure that no one cares about anybody's education, certifications, or whatever. Like, it's actually irrelevant. Like, I bet if I ask Jack, he probably doesn't even know what degrees or whatever anyone on the team has.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I don't know if it's unique to the game industry, but definitely education is not required. Sure, a computer science degree can help, but a lot of our coworkers don't have college degrees, and some of my friends who I would say are more talented than me did not get a college degree, and in some ways they even have a little bit of an edge on me because they were able to dedicate more of their life at my age to specifically narrowing down exactly what they want to be like known for, instead of having to dedicate 4 full-time years of your life to courses.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that answered the question. If there's any doubt, just go make a thing you're excited about, try to make the thing really small, try to show it to the world. You just keep walking the path that appears before you, basically. You don't have to wait 4, 5, 6 years to finish a degree to start doing something. You can start doing something right now and go to school too, because I personally loved school. I went to college for music, totally not computer science. But I also loved programming, so I would have been unemployable. No one would have ever hired me to like program or do anything for anybody. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. Let's give a quick round of applause again for our guys. And we have free Veil pins up here. A good friend of mine 3D printed them, and they glow in the dark, so please feel free to take as many as you want. You can always print more. But yeah, I think we'll be around for a couple more minutes if you want to come up and say hi or ask any more questions. Feel free. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.